as we're coming in, and we've got about, you can tell we're low to the ground. We're coming in fast. Even the fireman sitting next to me, he's like, I can't believe how fast we're coming in. I just want to get on the ground and get it over with, And
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, I've got about a minute.
Yeah.
And there are things left. There's things I was thinking about in my life. There are things that I had made important in my life that really weren't important. They were secondary.
Sure.
And the things that I had made secondary in my life were actually the most important.
Welcome to the True Wealth Podcast, where happiness is more often found in the soul of someone's wealth rather than the size of it. Money, after all, is a tool. It's not the destination. Money is the fuel to advance your core values and your purpose. Join us as we share some inspiring stories, true wealth life lessons, and practical strategies to help you design a life of intention, generosity, and fulfillment. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the True Wealth Podcast. Today's episode, I'm gonna kind of turn it over to Nick and let him lead, but we have a guest. Joe Stehlin is here with us. I did say that right? Joe
Yes.
Stehlin.
Stehlin. You got it.
Hey,
So welcome. Glad to have you here. I know you've kind of been in a mentoring relationship a little bit, or just a friendship relationship, but you've had a lot of life stories.
Yes.
And almost to the point as Nick shared them to me, I'm going, nobody can have that many stories.
Here, I thought I was just an average guy.
Well,
just an average Joe?
but you
Just
know what?
average Joe. That's what I tell people. I'm just average Joe.
You're not average
I
Joe.
think, though, as I started thinking, and I know I have a coach that I just recently hired, and he's been challenging me to just be quiet and listen to what God is saying. I think we all have a lot of little stories, and we just don't always take the time to hear what they're saying. So, Nick, why don't you kind of introduce Joe a little bit?
That's one of the most interesting things I've always found about Joe, is that you are so in tune with God's voice. You know, that so many times we in our lives would say, well, what a coincidence, or, can't believe that happened. And you don't take those on surface value. Like you take them on the value of God is working in every aspect of our lives. So Joe and I went to the same church. And at one point we got connected, and he said, well, if you want to hear my story, I'd be glad to share it with you. And I'm thinking, we'll go to lunch, and I'll we'll spend an hour together, and let's see what you got to say. And about, I don't know, a year later of having lunch,
I shared with him my testimony, and he was blown away by it. And he asked the question, he said, do you have other stories like that? And I said, I'll be honest with you, Nick, if we were to sit down for coffee for 1 hour a week, it will probably take me all summer to tell you my stories.
Yeah.
And he's like, challenge accepted. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And it did. I think it took like 13 weeks.
I'm sure
it took us to get through.
Yep. And it was, and truly, every time you get together, you're blown away. And you've put a few of them in a book. So you're an author.
Yes.
Wrote a book called Hunted and Called, and released it.
Came out in September of 22.
Okay. Yeah. And so a lot of the stories you've shared with me, well, I won't even say that's misspoken. Just a little
Snippet?
taste of some of the stories that you shared with me are in this book.
Yeah,
but some of the more powerful ones.
Well, of course, my testimony, and that's by far the most important story in there.
Sure.
What God did and how He changed my life. But I had to cherry pick the other stories.
Yeah.
Which ones needed to go in there. The book itself isn't just my personal story, but it's also I'm really more concerned. I'm happy that people would want to know my story and hear what God has done in my life, but I also, more importantly, want them to see who God really is.
Sure.
And not who the world sells Him to be.
Yeah.
Most people have this attitude that God, if they believe in Him at all, they have this attitude that God is distant, He's harsh, He's vindictive, He's judgmental, He's unforgiving, and they have this weird concept of God, and it's completely inconsistent with His character. And so in the Bible, the Jews would give God names based on His different characteristics.
Sure.
They would call Him Jehovah Jireh, meaning the Lord our provider, or Jehovah Shalom, the Lord our peace. And there's a bunch of those names.
Yep.
So each chapter of the book has a specific Jehovah name of God associated with it, because that particular characteristic of God will come through in those stories in the book.
And so you share your stories of how God has showed up in those ways. So
I think the other thing that happens is there's also this narrative that, and God is love, but it's like, if He can be love, they can't balance, how can He also be just? Or how can He, so that can be a conflicted.
Psalm 19 says, the judgment of the Lord is true and righteous altogether.
Right.
So, yes, he is love, but he's also a just God and a holy God who will not tolerate sin. Right now, he's tolerating it on a temporary basis.
Yeah.
And his grace is good for everyone, for what Christ did on the cross. However, there is going to come a time when all of us will have to stand before him and answer.
Sure.
And, of course, he is going to come back, and then, then his true judgment and righteousness will come out then.
Thing, so the plumb line on the true wealth actually comes from my dad was a pastor, and one of my favorite sermons was on the plumb line. Now, he was a carpenter before he got into the ministry, so plumb line was natural to him. Well, Amos 7:7 is God having a conversation with Amos, and he's showing him why he was going to judge Israel. And then Amos pleaded, God kind of recanted. And the third time, he says, Amos, what do you see? He said, I see a plumb line. Well, the plumb line is the one thing that can tell you whether you're building something true. And Amos was able to see just how corrupt and crooked Israel had become. And he said, I trust you, Lord. So I use it more to how we're building our life, not the judgmental side of why God was using it. But that's a visual that I use in the book. Very, very well aligned.
Now you're experiencing why my lunches with Joe go so long sometimes. She creates amazing dialogue, but
we can throw away the script and just talk. I'll be fine with that.
Exactly.
I'm like,
that's what we want is open dialogue. But you tee it up because you say, we'll all stand face to face. Well, so you had an experience recently where you really faced that at the end of the day. And so here I get this text from Joe that says, we have to get together. I have a story for you. And when Joe says, I have a story for you, I'm like on the edge of my seat going,
Nick's
no
thinking,
way.
I already heard them all. What other stories are there?
What happened
Here goes
now?
another summer.
What happened now? And then he throws in this little caveat. Let's just say, I'm glad I'm here to tell it to you. I'm going, what in the world happened? Yeah. And so we got together recently, and Joe shared his most recent story with me. And the part that hit me is a lot of times when people come in for the first time, one of the questions we ask them is, the doctor gives you 2 weeks to live. What are you doing? And the reason we ask that is because we're trying to get people to think beyond the money and to try to get a little sense of what's truly important to them. Because for us, dying with the biggest pile, is not what it's all about. We want to help people create the life that they're called to lead, and your money is certainly woven into that, but that's not what's important. So that's the reason we ask that question. Well, you're telling me this story, and at one point you reference 10 minutes until this event is potentially going to come to be. And I'm going, that's the question. Like, we give people 2 weeks, you had 10 minutes, so what I'd love you to do, if you're okay with it, is just share what happened. And that's going to create all sorts of dialogue and questions from there.
Sure.
But if you can just share your story, how you shared it with me.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. So it was just a couple weeks ago, actually. Pardon me. I was flying home to see my family. They live in South Bend, Indiana.
Okay.
So I always fly from here to Chicago and then Chicago to South Bend.
Sure.
So I was on a flight from here to Chicago. I was on a 737-800, and we're heading out to O'Hare. Everything was normal until we went in for landing. So we're coming in for landing. You can feel the gear come down. You can feel everything the way it's supposed to be. I've flown hundreds of times. I used to work for American Airlines. You know how it's supposed to feel, how it's supposed to look. And there was this strange, high-pitched squealing sound that I was unfamiliar with. And apparently it was obvious to everyone else because everyone's kind of looking around. It happened like 2 or 3 times. And then all of a sudden you felt the acceleration kick in and the wheels come back up and we lifted up and okay, so we're not landing?
This is not normal. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what just happened? So the captain comes over the intercom and he says, well, as you can tell, we've aborted the landing. We're getting some warning lights up here. We're going to go out over the lake because we're right by Lake Michigan there. We're going to go out over the lake and do some troubleshooting, and we'll let you know it's probably nothing. We'll get you down soon and all that. So they click off, and we're just kind of sitting there, and I've got the little TV screen on the seat back in front of me, and I see us circling around Lake Michigan. So 20, 25 minutes goes by, and he comes back on. He says, "This is the captain, and I need everyone to stop what you're doing and listen to me."
Whoa.
And I'm like, okay, I've never heard anyone start a conversation like that.
And probably even his tone was different, I would think.
Yeah, he was just, everyone listen to me. He said, we have a semi-serious situation. We cannot get our flaps to work, which means we cannot slow down. He says, we're gonna come in for a landing in a little bit, but we are gonna come in fast and hard. And he said, I'm going to do everything I can to maintain control of the aircraft once we're down. And once we're down, that's when we can start slowing down. We'll do max braking action, but we won't be able to slow down until we get on the ground. He said, we have declared an emergency, and then there will be emergency personnel on the ground waiting for us when we get there. They're there for us as a precaution. He said, I don't think we'll need it, but that's why they're there.
Whoa.
He said, now with that being said, I want everyone to take a deep breath. And don't panic. He said, we trained for this. We got this. And he said, we're all in this together. He said, we got about 10 minutes, so do what you need to do to get ready. That includes putting everything away. If you're up in the lav, whatever, you need to sit down. Everyone's seatbelts need to be on. Put the tray tables up. And he said, then the flight attendants are going to give you some other instructions. So he clicks off, and I was sitting in first class because I always sit in first because I always have such a tight connection in Chicago.
Sure.
I always have to change terminals, and I only have like 30 minutes. So I always get myself near the front of the plane. I happen to be in first class with like 6 firemen who came out to buy a truck in the, like the Brandon area. And they're all looking at each other when they heard emergency vehicles on the ground. They're like, what? Should we get out and help? They're like, yeah, is this a drill? Who picked this flight? And it kind of broke the ice.
Sure.
But as we're getting our stuff ready, the flight attendant comes around and says, when we hit the ground, we're probably going to hit a lot harder than you're used to. And if you feel you need to, if you need to brace for your, don't hit your head on anything, grab the seat in front of you like this. Do not lock your elbows. And they're giving us all these instructions, and they're verifying everyone has their seatbelt on. And they're like, everyone just get ready. We got about 10 minutes before we come in. And I'm like, are we going to crash?
Yeah.
I mean, what is happening right now?
Sure.
So as a believer, I've been a believer for 35 years. I'm thinking this is probably the most opportune time to pray for my pilot.
Yeah.
So I start praying for the pilot and the mechanics of the plane and the situation in general. But it was really, I have to tell you, there was one other time in my life when I came really close to death. And I'm not saying that this situation was that, but I came really close to death when I first got COVID. I was in the emergency room, and I had this overwhelming sense of peace that came over me.
Sure.
The Bible talks about the peace that surpasses all understanding. We've all felt it in times of personal stress, sickness, financial issues, whatever.
Yeah.
This was like that, but on a much greater scale.
Okay.
It was a feeling of complete safety, complete calm, totally secure. As if maybe the same feeling that like Daniel would have had in the lion's den when the Lord was with him, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. He was with them. I felt the Lord right there with me.
Wow.
And my prayer shifted. Instead of praying for my personal situation, all of a sudden I started praying my prayer shifted, and I started praying for my wife.
Sure.
And I started to be concerned if this goes badly. If we do lose control and the plane crashes and I'm killed.
Yeah.
Lord, please be with my wife.
Sure.
She's going to take this really hard, be with her every day. I started praying for my family. My dad's been struggling with some health issues, and I was on my way out to see them and to be with my family and to walk with them. I was praying for my church. We just started going to a new church. My wife's the associate pastor at Calvary Assembly of God on 57th Street. And we have this church that we go to with this amazing church family, and we're just getting to know them. And I started praying for our pastor and the people there that we've met. And I started praying for other people, and I wasn't thinking about myself. So as we're coming in, and I tell you what, if you've flown, you know what it's like when you come in for landing. You know you're going fast, but you're also slowing down. You look out the window and like, oh, look at this building and look at those cars. When you're coming in without flaps, you're coming in a lot faster. You're coming in.
You're hot.
You're hot. Yeah, I've talked to several pilots about it. My father-in-law is a former Air Force major. He flew B-52s for 16 years. And I talked with him about it. And he said, when you're coming in faster ground speed because you're not slowing down, obviously. And it's also removing the ability of the plane to have lift.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to angle the plane at just the right angle because one knot too fast, one knot too slow, and you could stall too quickly and then lose control of the plane.
Right.
He said it's a completely survivable process, and a lot of pilots consider it a non-event because they train for it so intensely.
Sure.
I talked to a pilot yesterday who flew for 35 years. He's retired now. I asked him, other than simulators, how many times did you have a no-flaps landing? He said, never. It's incredibly rare.
Right.
So here we're doing this no-flaps landing in Chicago O'Hare. And as we're coming in, and we've got about, you can tell we're low to the ground. We're coming in fast. Even the fireman sitting next to me, he's like, I can't believe how fast we're coming in. I just want to get on the ground and get it over with, And
yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, I've got about a minute.
Yeah.
And there's things I was thinking about in my life. There are things that I had made important in my life that really weren't important. They were secondary.
Sure.
And the things that I had made secondary in my life were actually the most important.
Yeah.
And I started to, because for instance, Nick knows this. I love sports, and I especially love baseball, and I love baseball history.
Sure.
And I collect baseball history. And so I collect memorabilia, anything that's game used, anything attached to history itself, and football as well. I love a card collection. I have a fairly extensive card collection, and I spend a lot of my time and my money and my effort chasing cardboard to find the best and newest thing, and it's an addiction.
Certainly.
When I was coming down on that plane, I was not thinking about my card collection.
No, I'm sure.
I was not thinking about the 20 years I've put into my job and all the effort that I've put in there and the life that I've tried to build. I was thinking about my family and my wife. And God really reprioritized my life in that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality of it, right? Is that, a pilot may look at it and go, it's survivable. We've practiced this. We've done this 100 times. Well, those of us sitting in the plane, those of you sitting in that plane who have not experienced anything like that are truly faced with the reality of like we might crash. I mean, at the end of the day, you have a minute before you either have an incredible survival testimony or you're standing face to face with your Lord.
That's actually what I thought. I'm sitting there in the plane and I'm like, okay, in the next 2 or 3 minutes, I'm either going to walk away from this with a story, or I'm actually going to be standing in front of Jesus in a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a surreal thing. If you've ever faced a moment like that, like you may been a believer for decades, and all of a sudden you have this moment, you're like, I might see Jesus in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah. All of a sudden, a rookie Mickey Mantle didn't matter.
Yeah, no, it just, I mean, I would love it, but I'm telling you, no,
I need that one, maybe.
But I'm telling you, it changed everything. And so when the plane came down, we hit hard. I mean, he said we were going to hit hard. We did. We hit hard. And hard enough, the plane bounced back up.
Ooh.
And when we came down the second time, the back end of the plane kind of shifted to the right.
You could feel yourself kind of...
And it may have not have been that extreme, but it felt extreme when all of a sudden the back, everything kind of turns, because that's when everyone on the plane, I heard people kind of like holler out or gasp really loud.
Yeah. That's
when I kind of grabbed the seat, because I for a second, I thought the plane was going to slide off the side or it was going to roll.
Yeah, certainly.
But it straightened out real quick, and you heard the reverse thrust engines come on real loud. And at that point, the only other brakes he has are the foot pedals up front, and he's pumping them hard. And it reminded me of when we have icy roads in Sioux Falls, and I'm trying not to slide into an intersection. I'm pumping the brakes real hard.
Now all of a sudden, everything feels in slow motion. And you can hear it going. I agree there.
He's pumping those brakes, so the whole plane is gyrating really, powerfully. And then there was just it probably only, the whole thing maybe lasted 20 seconds.
Yeah.
It felt like a lot longer.
Yeah.
But there was a moment you realized everything was under control. And as we started to slow down, and the whole plane erupted in cheering.
Sure.
Everyone's cheering and clapping. Some people are crying. And They had us pull off to the side, and they had emergency vehicles come around us because they have to check to make sure we didn't blow a tire or the brakes weren't on fire or we weren't leaking fuel because we had this hard landing.
Certainly.
And then once they cleared us, we went to the terminal. And as we're getting off the plane, everybody is going up, shaking the pilot's hand, telling him thank you. And I was one of the first ones off, and I wanted off that plane. And I just looked at him, I said, hey, you're awesome. Thank you. And
moved on.
And so I had people, they're like, so were you scared to fly after that? I'm like, I had to fly 30 minutes later. I still made my connection.
Yeah.
I
That
couldn't
would be
believe
hard
it.
to get back on a plane. But I suppose, I went through one. What's the odds of having another one, I guess. But.
Well, I'm not going to lie. When I was on the next flight to South Bend, which is a quick flight, as we're coming in for landing, I'm looking out the window. Are the flaps working?
Yeah.
So
Certainly.
But it was just a short moment in time. And as some pilots say, it's a completely survivable event. But that event, God used that to change something in my heart, to make me realize that the things that I had valued as important, that I need to remember that they are temporary.
Right.
And while they have their place, maybe not my card collection, but while our finances and our wealth and the time we put in at our work to work towards retirement, they have their place within His plan. They are not our ultimate destiny.
Right.
And they need to remain in our mindset temporary, and we need to, as Christians, keep our eyes on what is eternal.
Yeah.
Focus on our relationships, focus on your marriage, focus on what God has put in your life and your call, the call He's put in your life, and the opportunities we have every day to share God's love with those who don't know it.
Absolutely.
So what have you, like on the back end, you and I have talked about this a little bit, and I had my fun half marathon story from 2019. So it's going to be 7 years ago here in a couple days when we're recording this. And the struggle I had on the back end is, you get some people that hear the story and say, well, you shouldn't have survived that, or you can't survive that, or whatever. And the whole thing is like, well, I guess I did, and I'm here. And so it's what you start to process these things in your mind going, was it really that big a deal? Like, am I making am I crying wolf here? Like, am I just telling this story to try to, bring some sort of attention to myself? And we play all sorts of mind games with ourselves. And I don't know if that's the enemy that's trying to take us away from what God actually has to do in our life, the message that He's trying to send. So have you had to process through some of those aspects?
So I'm going to be completely forthright with you. So that happened on March 24th. I didn't feel anything for a couple weeks.
Like a numbness? You just didn't feel anything?
I was aware of what happened, and I told my family about it. And we talked about it for a day, and then we just kind of went on with our lives. And I talked with my wife about it, and I spent a week in Indiana, and then I came home. And then I was probably home for a week or so. So we're talking like April 7th, April 8th. So we're only talking about 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And I started having nightmares.
Sure.
And panic attacks. I started having uncontrollable emotion where I would just start wanting to cry, or I'd start to cry, or I'd get angry really easily. I started having terrible insomnia. I would sleep 2 hours, and then I'd be up, and then I'd maybe get 2 more hours, and I'd go to work. And this happened 6-7 days in a row. So I asked my wife, I said, do you think that maybe that situation, the fear of it, traumatized me? Because I didn't feel scared in the moment, and I didn't even feel terribly scared afterwards. I mean, I will say this: when the plane first landed and we went through the kind of the slowing down process that was a little dramatic, when everyone started cheering, I felt this involuntary emotion come up. I felt my eyes like water, and I kind of choked back that emotion, and just that was the first moment that I realized that I was actually scared of what could have happened.
Sure.
Not that I'm afraid to die. I know that when that happens, I'll be okay. And in fact, I left this part out, I should mention. I mean, right before the plane touched down, I said a prayer to God, and I said, whatever you decide in this moment, I'm okay with, because I trust you. Mm-hmm. And I told my wife that, and Jennifer, and she said, you basically said, it is well with my soul.
Yeah.
It is well with your soul. In this moment, if you choose to, spare us, if you choose to take me, I trust you, regardless, either way. Yeah. But since then, I have been experiencing difficulty with it. Sure. I find myself Googling it, trying to find out more information. How often do aircraft actually crash from no-flap landings? And there's a percentage of it. And how often is it, a safe landing? Because I work at the airport as a supervisor with the TSA security, I meet a lot of pilots.
Sure.
Some of them I just know over time, so I've spoken to them, or I've gone up to a stranger who's I can see as a captain. I said, let me ask you a question about no-flap landings. And I start trying to get more information because I need to digest what happened.
Sure. Sure.
I've talked with a couple people who said the best thing I can do is talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because while the pilots, like you said, they train for it, they recognize the situation, they're prepared for it, and in their minds, so long as everyone does what they're supposed to do, everything's fine.
Sure.
Some of them are just like, yeah, it's considered a non-event, you just need a longer runway. Okay, right. I don't know that.
Right.
All I know is that they're telling me we're coming in fast and hard and get your seatbelt ready and take a breath and all that. And I'm like, and I've flown hundreds of times, and I had this experience. Regardless if it was going to be 100% safe or not, God still says, hey, we're going to take this moment in your life, and I'm going to reorganize the things that I've been trying to get through to you on.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, unpack that one, because it's easy when life's just flowing along, right? And we sort of just march day to day, status quo. We get up and walk through the walk meander through life, however it leads us. And we have a tendency sometimes to think that we always have time.
Yeah.
There's always tomorrow, right? I'll do that tomorrow. I'll have that conversation tomorrow. I'll say that tomorrow. Well, when you're faced with the reality that I might not have that opportunity to do that, yes, you're here to tell the story, which praise God for that. but that's where it's like you struggle a little bit, because you go, well, was it, how real was it? How close was I? Well, that doesn't matter. What matters is you felt it, and God has done something in your life to reprioritize, reorganize. So what are some of the steps you've taken? What have you been processing through on that end of things to go, all right, God, if you got the message.
Well, I tell
Thank you.
I'll tell you what. Here's the thought I've had, and this is just my relationship with the Lord. I'm like, have I been so close-minded to you that it took a potential plane crash for you to get my attention in this area?
Right.
I'm like, I'm sure you came to me about this stuff in the last year, and I just wasn't listening. Yep. He's like, well, I guess I got to wake him up. So, yeah.
Do you go through a period too? And I guess the listeners haven't unpacked your story, Nick, and we can do that too some other time. And you probably both have a little bit. But do you get to a certain point too where you're going, what is my purpose? Do you go through that, or you know what your purpose is now by how things were reorganized, or is that something you still work through? I'm just curious.
Mm.
Well, so if you read my book, right?
Yep.
There are things in the book I talk about. One of the things is I was born with a health condition that's it's not a disease, but it's a condition where I have an extra chromosome, and it creates a lot of significant health issues that I struggle with constantly. And I won't go into all that because we'll go down a whole other rabbit trail. But I struggle with health, and that's something I'm constantly fighting. And would it be all right if I read a quick scripture?
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah.
I want to read this because it's from my favorite psalm, and it's from Psalm 73, and this is Asaph. And long story, but Asaph is struggling with health. He's struggling with the culture that he's living in and how wicked they are, and he's trying to serve the Lord. And the wicked are prospering while he is suffering, and yet they're not serving the Lord, and they're blatantly against him while he's serving the Lord. And he says something very profound at the end. He says, though my health may fail and my spirit may grow weak, God remains the strength of my life, and he is my portion forever.
Sure.
Another version says he is mine forever. Last verse, he says, but as for me, how good it is to be near God. I have made the sovereign Lord my shelter, and I will tell everyone about the wonderful things you do.
Sure.
So in spite of his cultural situation, despite his personal health and whatever situations he was struggling with, he recognized that God was his ultimate source of strength and life, and it was his mission to tell everyone about the wonderful things God does, even if they're not readily apparent in his own life.
Certainly.
And that is an idea that I try to adopt.
Okay.
I want to tell everybody.
Behind the episode, besides the event that you went through, one of the 9 principles is valuing your health. And I do think that's a whole other conversation. We take that for granted. So having, as you say, you struggled that for most of your life. But yeah, I still, because I've had some not that significant, or like in your situation, Nick, where you get done and you go, I'm happy I'm here. But do I need to really think, why am I here? Or did you have a more sense that I do now know why I'm here?
I see. That's where I've struggled, and just over the last couple of years, because I've told Joe this too, where I kind of just put it away for a while, because it's it's weird to process. Like, I just wasn't sure, what exactly happened. I was fearful of drawing, attention to myself. To some extent, you just want it to go away.
Yep.
One, you feel like an idiot, because it's like I'm the guy that ended up in the medical tent at the half marathon. Probably naked in the ice bath and whatever, and no one needs to get that mind picture in their head. So one, it's maybe you're embarrassed of how it happened, but two, it's it's a little vulnerable to talk about, and so I sort of just shoved it away. And I was telling Joe earlier, it's weird. Like I've noticed. So every year around that time, I'll just sense I'm just a little off. Like there's a little anxiety. There's stuff that rises up in my life. I go, what in the world is going on? And I'll look at the date and go, wow, like it's 3 days from now.
Yeah,
is when that happens, and I've had that in my life, as of late. And so for me, like, I don't think I spent the proper amount of time truly processing through what God was trying to change in my life, and I think I've still battled that to this day.
Sure.
So just the last couple of years, I've tried to give myself the time and space to process through a little more. All right, God, like what were you actually trying to show me?
Yep.
And so I guess have you had that too a little bit? And how has your life changed since this experience?
Well, granted, for me, it's been less than a month.
Right. Sure.
So it was March 24th, and so we're not even to a month yet.
Yep.
I'm like you, when anniversaries of significant events like that come around, it's not that you just remember it, a portion of you relives it because you're emotionally attached to it.
Yeah.
I've lost people in my life. One of my best friends has already passed away at the age of 47. I've had people, that I've lost, and I remember them when those dates come around. I don't just remember them, I relive it. So I understand what you're saying. And I have a feeling when March 24th rolls around next year, a part of me is going to relive it. But I will say this, what I've worked through so far. I've always had I feel like a good relationship with the Lord. 35 years I've known him. But my intentional worship toward him has intensified.
Now, since the event?
Yes.
Yeah.
For one, just to praise him for making sure that worked out. And also opening my eyes to see what was more important than what I had deemed important.
Yep.
The day after it happened, I called my wife up. She's, out here in South Dakota. I'm in Indiana. And I said, hey, would you like to do devotions this morning? And you got to understand, I hadn't initiated devotions in our marriage in a couple of years.
Sure.
And we're both believers. I don't know why. I just have not been very good in that area. That is an area I have failed in as a Christian husband.
Sure.
And she was like, wow. And I said, yeah, I want to do devotions with you. And so we picked a book in the Bible, and every day we did a little FaceTime, and we read it, and we pray with each other. And that is another thing I have struggled with in our marriage. I have always struggled with praying with my wife.
Sure.
I don't know why. That is probably the one area where I have struggled to be the most vulnerable with her. And we pray with each other every day. She prayed with me this morning. I prayed with her yesterday.
Sure.
So there has been more intentional attention to that area of our marriage, more intentional worship towards God. Like I said, I wasn't thinking about my card collection when we were coming down on that plane, and I realized there's nothing wrong with the hobby, but there is wrong in the excess of it. And I don't need excess.
Yeah.
So I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I'm looking at it. I'm like, this is where I overstepped.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the stuff that's important to me, and everything else, I'm selling it. So I figured out how to go on eBay. I've posted like 135 items already, and I've just touched the surface of my collection.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take that money and put it towards some of our debt, and put it towards something that my wife and I are trying to strive for. Mm-hmm. That's very expensive. And and that's a whole other story. Yeah. But yeah, so God was reorganizing things in me. Mm-hmm. And it's still happening. Like I said, it hasn't even been a month. So this is still a process I'm working through.
Sure.
So if someone's listening and hasn't and is dealing with this whole battle that we all have, this eternal battle of keeping up with the Joneses, of pursuing the stuff that the world says is important to have, the possessions, everything that comes along with that, everything we hold dear that maybe we shouldn't, and hasn't had their 10-minute warning mm-hmm. to begin to process through those things, or in my case have had 7 years to process through and just hasn't given it proper space in their life to do that. What would you, having dealt with everything you've dealt with, and granted you are still processing through it, but what would you encourage people to do, to think through, to change?
So what I would say, there is nothing wrong with building wealth, building retirement. In fact, I'm nervous about my own retirement. Am I setting this up right? Am I doing it right? Because I'm 52 years old, and what's that going to look like in 10 or 20 years? And that is 100% the right thing to do. You can't just wing it. You have to organize it. You have to build it, but be careful that you don't get caught up in it. And my main advice would be is to every day look at the things in your life and separate them between the temporary and the eternal. Mm-hmm. Don't get so caught up in having to have the nicer car. I work with people who are like, I have to have a brand new car. I have to have it. Why? Why do you have to have a brand new car? You're 20 years younger than me. Yeah. Why do you have to have a new laptop? You just got one 2 years ago, or something like that. Be careful that you're not getting caught up in the things that are temporary. Everything in my life I can point to, my laptop, my car, my house, my finances, my card collection, it is temporary. Mm-hmm. One day, your life is going to be called of you, and you have no idea when that's going to be. Everyone assumes they're going to live till they're 90.
Yeah.
But you're not. Like I said, one of my best friends passed away a few years ago. He's 47. You do not know, and you cannot take it with you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So keep in mind what is the temporary and what is the eternal. And Jesus said not to store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but treasures in heaven where moth and rust can't take it away. It's not to say that you can't build wealth and prepare and be financially secure for you and your family and for the future. That's important. But don't get so caught up in the excess because you can't take it with you.
Well, for our listeners too, our industry is built on accumulation. That's we probably bucked
I could use some help with that. I'm not going to lie because
Well, there's nothing wrong with accumulation to a degree, but we've tried to take a little bit of a different spin and say it's really about aligning what's been accumulated towards what's really important, and that goes beyond just. It's the people, it's experiences. There's a lot more that's involved with that, and I think that's always kind of the message behind the whole podcast itself: is that are you focusing on the right things? When is enough enough? Yeah, we have a responsibility to be accumulating. And okay, God, is that because you want me supporting causes, or do you want me to, whatever that may be? Mm-hmm. But too many times we're in such a hurry. We're so rushed. I guess I kind of always knew this because my wife did have me get I don't have ducks. They're not in a row. I have squirrels and they're everywhere. She gave me one of those signs. But my coach this morning said, do you have ADHD or ADHD? And I was like, I don't know. He said, yes, you do. So one of his instructions to me was, when you're done, he knew we had this podcast coming up. He said, I want you to go outside and for 10 minutes, just sit and listen and write down what you hear. Once you get past the car, just the cars that are going by. And it was 2 weeks ago, he said to me, because I was going through some things, we've shared that with you too, but battling with it. And my normal male me, I got to fix this. I can go do this. And then he said to me, well, how much time have you spent trying to fix it? And how much time have you spent just listening to what God's telling you to do? And I had to kind of admit, I haven't done that real well. So that was this instruction to me. And now I come in and I hear, clearly I'm getting zapped inside the head with a sledgehammer. That's something I got to pay more attention to. But you handled it much more methodically than I would have. I know I'd have been kissing the ground when I got outside the plane. So kudos to you. But I guess I do have a lot of other questions, but when we can readdress these as well. But did you find yourself getting right back into the same patterns within a few weeks?
Weeks is all I've had.
Yeah.
There were, yes. So I would say even in terms of like the card collection, that is one of my favorite hobbies in my downtime, to go do that. And within a couple days in South Bend, I'm at a card shop and I'm looking through stuff, but I felt something gnawing at me. And I could just this has to change. And I could feel a subtle shift. Like I said, the very next day I'm calling my wife and we need to do devotions. And there were a few things I could feel God wanting to change after that experience. And I thought, well, it doesn't need to change right away. I can still do this. And it just gnawed at me. And I was like, no, I'm going to make intentional change. Like another thing, I wrote the first book. Yes. Yeah. I started writing the second book about 2 years ago. And for the last year, I'm just going to be completely honest with whoever's listening, because that's how I am. I'm just going to put it out there. I have a lot of family and friends are going to they're watching this. Yeah. They will be. God started putting on my heart a year ago that he wanted me to take one of my days off every week and go to the library for a few hours to focus on that second book. Yeah. And I'd say I got about 75% of the way done, having never gone to the library at all. Yeah. Instead, anytime I thought, hey, I should get my backpack and go to the library, instead, I went and did what I wanted to do. Sure. I'm like, it's my day off. I've worked hard this week. I don't want to focus on studying. I want to go do this or go do that. And that's what I did, and I justified it for a year. Sure. So what did I do when I got home on my first day off? Yeah. I went to the library. In fact, no joke. After I'm done here, I have a 2-hour hold on a private room in a library to go and sit and focus and study, because I'm going to start doing the things that God asked me to do even before that event happened. Yeah. I need to make that priority. Right. That book has had an impact on people. What will the next book have? Yeah. And why in the world am I dragging my feet? I don't know. Right. And God's saying, I need you to do this. So he's kind of pushing me into it, so I'm not going to resist that anymore.
Well, I guess I would challenge listeners, too. You do not necessarily need to have one of these major life-altering events or being thrown in an ice bath because at the end of a marathon. You need to stop, listen. What are the little miracles that are going on in your life every day, and hearing them and appreciating them? Because I think they're there all around us. We're so busy, and I think we get distracted in a lot of other ways. So that would be one of the challenges that I would encourage people to do. Wrap some things up here. I know we always, when we have great guests, we always go longer than we anticipate, and we could probably go for an hour for 13 weeks. Is that where we're at?
Well, right. Exactly. Well, I think we've got some fun rapid fire questions we're going to throw at you. But before we get to that, I guess one interesting perspective would be if you could go back and have a conversation with pre-flight Joe, or go back and maybe change one thing, before it happened. What would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It's like those things you see on Facebook. If you could go back in time and talk to your 21-year-old self for 1 minute, what would you say? Yeah. Gosh, why'd you have to hit me with that one? There's so much I would want to say.
I have never once heard him be speechless. This is the first time
We've accomplished something.
This is the first time ever Joe hasn't had an answer.
That's a compliment.
Yeah.
I would probably, if I could just dumb it down, I'd probably say,
You need to for us.
well, I'd probably just tell my younger self from that moment, just stop and listen.
Yeah.
Listen more. And quit chasing after I was chasing after what made me happy and not chasing after what made him happy.
Right.
And ultimately, when I'm following God's will, when I'm going in the direction he's asked me to go, I am way more satisfied in my life. I'm way more at peace.
Yeah.
And, we chase the things that are fun for us, and they are fun. And if I can expound on this quick, rapid question.
Yeah.
Oh, those are still to come.
They're still coming.
This was the
This was just the preface.
Those things bring happiness. They do.
Yeah.
But happiness is not a permanent situation. Happiness is an emotion based on external circumstances and can change at any moment. And Jesus didn't say, I have come to make you happy. There's nowhere in the Bible that says he wants us to be happy.
Right.
He does, however, say that he came to bring joy, full and abundant and overflowing, and that he came to bring, inexpressible joy. And joy, you can have that even in a terrible circumstance, even when your kid's in the hospital, or even when you're struggling financially, or you have no idea what's going on at your job, or you're not sure how you're going to put food on the table. You can still have that joy because it's something that he brings. But happiness, those things make me happy, but they do not last.
Well, the second thing my coach said before I came in here is, when I'm done listening, then I need to come back in, take a sheet of paper, put a line down the middle, and on the one side put the things I can control, and on the other side put the things I can't. And then I need to just spend my energy on those things I can control, like spending time with family, focusing on what's important. And the rest, I just have to let God be God. So good coach as well. But anyway.
Yeah, amen.
You say that, and so the day that I got to Indiana, the day that happened, and I go there not just to see my parents, my brother and his wife. And my brother Mark and his wife Lori have two amazing kids, Ava and Jacob. They're going to be stoked that I said their names. Right? They're 10 and 7. Sure. And I get such a kick out of playing with these kids. And they only live 7 houses from my parents. And this is just a couple hours after the whole plane incident happened. And they said, Uncle Joe, will you walk with us over to our house? I said, no. They kind of looked at me like, no. I said, we're not walking. We're dancing.
Sure.
And I said, let's dance. And we danced down the street because for me, I knew what I had walked away from.
Right.
I danced all the way down that street. My brother's recording it, so there's film out there somewhere.
Those kids will never forget that.
Find that.
The cheesiest dance in the world because I didn't care. It was like a celebration.
Certainly.
That is cool. I love that perspective. And I love all the conversations that we get to have because you have an amazing way of rerouting me into what's to focus on what's important, and God's done a work in your life, and you'd be the first one to admit that he's still working, every single day. But I appreciate your heart, who you are, your testimony, and just how in tune you are to what God's doing in your life. So thanks for sharing that story with us, and I know it's going to make an impact. We've got some rapid fire questions.
Yeah, so this is something we just kind of started doing with guests, and I think it's kind of becoming one of my favorites. So just don't think a lot. Just the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, so it's like, hey, hold up a picture. What does this remind you of?
Exactly.
Kind of. We want to.
Exactly.
This will kind of help us paint a picture from what things go. You have some in here that you like? I wrote 15 down. We can go through all of them.
Is that all? 15? Sure.
That's good.
All right. The first person you called from the plane. One word that describes them.
My wife.
Yeah. And how would you describe her?
She's my heart.
Perfect. Window or aisle? Has that changed since that episode?
No, I usually choose aisle simply because I have bad knees. I can stretch my legs.
Okay, one thing you thought mattered before the flight that doesn't anymore? You kind of answered that, but what's the first thing?
Personal hobbies.
Perfect. One thing you took for granted that you don't anymore?
Honestly, time with family, time with worship.
Nice. One thing you took for granted, the song you'd want playing if you ever had to go through that experience again.
Ooh.
These are good questions.
Those are fantastic questions. I have a lot of songs that I like. Oh, boy. If I had to go through that again?
Yeah.
Okay, off the top of my head, I love the new Mercy Me song, the It Is Well version.
Oh, yes.
Because he says, whatever my lot, you are still my God.
Perfect.
He keeps saying it over and over, and I
get
love
it.
that.
That's perfect.
A place you promised yourself to go and you haven't yet.
A place? Any place?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I would love to take my wife to the Holy Land.
Okay. All right. I thought this one was interesting, but coffee, whiskey, or water when you finally got to solid ground?
Well, I don't drink coffee.
Oh, God. That was one of my choices. That's good.
It's right here. Well, actually, I have coffee and water, but coffee, I love coffee. So
one word you would use to describe the pilots?
Oh, profound.
Nice.
They did an amazing job. Very professional.
A person you haven't told I love you recently enough?
My mom. That one's tough to say.
Yeah.
My dad.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be who. And my dad's not here, and I wish I could go back and say it one more time.
So
sure.
My dad is struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad.
Well, we'll keep him in our thoughts and prayers as well. Well, I was going to say the last time you cried before or after the plane, but you're right there, so I got you. You great lead into it.
You got me.
Most important meal of your week, and who's at that table?
Ooh. Most important meal of the week?
Yeah.
Most important meal of the week.
And who's at that table?
Who's at that table? Wait, you're saying, wait, let me try and understand this. Like this past week that I've already lived? Or
just anytime. If you said, this is my most important meal of the week.
All right. By far, it's time with my wife.
Okay. All right. If heaven has a landing strip, what do you hope that approach looks like?
That's hilarious.
You hope it has flaps.
No, that's the plane.
The plane has flaps, I guess. Yeah.
What does the landing strip look like?
Pillows.
Perfect. I get it.
It looked like pillows.
Best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received. Ooh. Man, I wish you would have asked me that when I could think about that one. The best advice I've ever received?
We can even come back to that.
No, there was a guy that I worked with 10 years ago, and he used to say this every time we'd say goodbye, he'd say the same thing, and it has resonated in my life. Be blessed and be a blessing.
Perfect. If you could keep only one memory from your life, which one?
April 15th, 1991.
Oh.
The day I gave my heart to the Lord.
Perfect.
It's in the book. It's chapter 4. It was the most powerful, incredible turning point in my life, the day I met the Lord.
It's an incredibly powerful story.
Yeah.
Because I hated him with everything in me, and I told him so. And then he came after me and revealed himself to me in such a way that I could not deny him, and everything changed.
Which is Haunted and Called, the name of your book.
Hunted and Called.
Hunted and
exactly.
Called. Not Haunted, Hunted. Thank you.
Yeah.
I better get that right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Last question. Finish this sentence. True wealth is?
True wealth?
Yeah.
True wealth is knowing Jesus.
Okay. Excellent.
That's cool. That's cool.
Well, anything you want to have in closing? Appreciate you doing that. That's always kind of a fun thing.
That was fun. That was a little nerve-wracking, like you don't know what's coming next.
Yeah, we try to keep it
It's not
light.
like I'm on the spot.
No, I guess, is there any, in the spirit of your final realization that there may be some things that you had left undone or unsaid in those moments that you wish you wouldn't have, don't leave here with the same thought. Is there anything that you've left unsaid that you would like to share with the people that hear this? Which I joked, is basically my mom and Kevin's wife, and that's.
I don't know how long my life is. I'm 52 years old. Like I said, I struggle with health issues, so I feel like it could end sooner. But at the same time, I have this gut feeling God's going to keep me around till I'm 90, and it's going to hurt like crazy. But that day is going to come, and not a single one of us can avoid it.
Yeah.
I want to stand before him knowing that I did everything I was supposed to do, that I said everything I was supposed to say, that I reached out to as many people as I could, that I lived my life in such a way that even if I didn't get to actually talk about him that day, that I act and I reacted in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, that I lived a life that gave someone an example of who God is and the love that he has for us, even if I didn't get a chance to share it.
No.
I want to be able to stand before him knowing that I did that. I don't want the feeling I had in the last 2 minutes coming down for landing where I had things that were undone. Not that I wasn't ready to go.
Yep.
But I knew that my life was incomplete. I knew I could have done more. I knew I could have said more. I knew I could have been better at a lot of things. And I didn't like that gnawing feeling that I could be entering into eternity incomplete.
Sure.
And I don't want that. So whatever your life looks like and whatever your relationship with God looks like, you have to do your own, self-evaluation.
Right.
And
I think it's one of the
decisions.
last episodes I talked to about that old Guy Lombardo song, It's Later Than You Think.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to take care of these things because we always think tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Tim Tebow was in town recently for an event, and one of the
where
things
is he? I would love to have met him. You could have.
Right.
There's room for another chair over here.
Later. Yeah, exactly.
We'll get you
Love to
back.
meet Tim
His
Tebow.
muscles wouldn't fit in this circle.
I would love to be.
Yeah.
There's room. He can have my chair. I'll sit on the floor.
But he goes, what a tragedy if we enter into heaven well rested.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's maybe a little bit what you're saying, you
Yeah.
know, is that don't leave those things undone, whatever energy, whatever it takes to do what you've God has called you to do it with all you got.
Well, perfect.
Yeah.
Joe, Nick, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
It's always a treat and a pleasure. We'll have to get you back because I know there's more stories.
I've got a couple more, and I tell you, I love this, so I do it again.
Awesome.
100%.
Perfect.
Cool.
Well, again, thank you for joining us on another episode of the True Wealth Podcast. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's conversation with Joe. And if there's things or questions you have, simply email them to info@pinnaclewealth.com. We'll be happy to either get you in contact with Joe, or if there's something we can help with, we're here to help any way we can. So if you like today's episode as well, be sure and share it, like it, send it to a family member, coworker, friend, anyone, wherever you listen to podcasts, just make sure you share, and include family members and friends. So we want to expand the True Wealth Nation because, after all, the pinnacle of wealth is true wealth. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back soon. The opinions voiced in today's True Wealth Podcast with Kevin Engbers, Nick Aamlid, and Ryan Ovenden are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendation by any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing.